Petty Capiano, of course, all politics is local. I'm hearing about how Louisiana Light Sweet is going to have a $2 differential upon that sour crude from elsewhere. But you said that's going to last for 2 years. When I look on Wikipedia, though, there's a lot of countries with light sweet oil, which I presume is, if already not in compliance inherently, is soon to be. So it seems like, is there not enough of the light sweet and the distillates worldwide to meet demand? Because you mentioned there will be a shortage of demand.
So to be more specific, we're seeing that you'll see a price differential initially in 2020, which will dissipate as you move out of 2020. It's being offset by the fact that the lower demand globally for energy fuel oil will compensate for that. It really becomes more of a question of getting the right fuel to the right place at the right time. And there's some adjustments.
So in the Gulf Coast, where we have Louisiana Light Sweet off the coastline, with our refineries right there, that's one more reason to make New Orleans and Lake Charles your hub for international shipping. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. And so what will happen is there'll be some shipping routes will adjust over time, and that's, I think, where the focus would be.
You threw in LNG as a part of the mix, I think you or Mr. Butler. How quickly will people transition? Because it seems like the price differential is even more favorable for liquefied natural gas.
Okay, you bring up a really good point. So the decision that needs to be made, which I cannot answer how the businesses will make that decision, is you can either buy light sweet crude, you can buy the low sulfur fuel, you can buy a scrubber and buy high sulfur fuel and reduce the sulfur yourself, or you can go to LNG, an LNG ship. Like I said, we have done long-term projections, and you'll see in our AEO that we do see growth in the LNG shipping.
Now, growth could be or growth can be.
Yeah, and time will tell. Time will tell, and we again look at data and project forward. I might, and some other people have mentioned the decision making that might go on in choosing between an LNG and a scrubber.
Mr. Webster, a thought on this?
Someone make a comment?
Thank you for your question, Senator. So we do anticipate that LNG shipping is going to grow over the next couple of years. Some of the decisions...
But quickly or modestly?
I think it's actually going to be relatively slow. It's starting from a very low base. I don't see it as something where it's going to be some giant amount. There's approximately 60,000 ships that kind of traverse the international water.
How much does it cost to retrofit?
If I recall, it's around a 30% increase. And you also have to deal with, which I think my colleague from the Shipping Council can discuss, is there's an impact in terms of how much you can actually ship on the ship, because, of course, the LNG material takes up more space in the ship.
Got it. Okay. And then the local, Mr. Butler, you mentioned about the local and country enforcement. Now, but I'm presuming that there's a whole set of countries that we know are going to enforce. The U.S. is going to enforce. France is going to enforce. Germany is going to enforce. Australia, Japan. So, and shipping routes are typically not going to be between, they're international. So how likely is it that a ship would not eventually go to a country that, by golly, we know is going to enforce? Do you follow what I'm saying? Can we rely upon this network of countries that we trust to enforce to capture all of the shipping just because it is international, and by definition, sooner or later they go through a jurisdiction which does enforce?
Senator, I mean, this is probably the most critical question with respect to this regulation at this point, because both from the standpoint of sending the right signals to markets, the more people that comply, the higher the compliance rate, the more clear signal you get from the demand side and the better response you get from the supply side. Speaking of the IMO...
Now, I've got limited time. My specific question, with international shipping routes being what they are, what is the likelihood that any ship could escape the jurisdiction of a country that, by golly, we know is going to enforce this standard?
The likelihood of escape, so long as the signatories to this convention enforce, the likelihood that a ship can escape is quite low.
Now, some of those countries may have signed, but we don't trust them. Just the countries that we trust, how much do we think that they're going to be able to enforce this?
Well, I'll have to ask you to define that universe, but this is where I was going a minute ago, which is it's critical that countries like the United States and other developed countries that already have experience in enforcing the emission control areas the way we do in the U.S. and Canada, that we keep this enforcement issue on the front burner.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.